Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today. It's great to have you with us on this Friday. Dave Revson, Jordan Taylor. We plunged headlong into the hoops weekend last night, a triple header that kept me up a little later than I might like. Right? We've been caffeinating a lot this morning, but some really good games.
Yeah, really good games. Kept us up late, but UCLA put Oregon to sleep last night.
Yes,
they were outstanding.
We were up later than the Ducks.
We were up later than the for sure. But Illinois was a great game. A lot of good stuff. A lot of fun in Big Ten basketball as we go into February.
It was. Let's start with our big story, and it is the show that UCLA put on. They demolished Oregon. They won by 26. It was a game the Bruins never trailed. They shot 56%. They hit 11 threes. They held the Ducks to 4 of 23 behind the arc. It was UCLA's fifth straight win, a team that seemed kind of lifeless a couple weeks ago, now playing as well as anyone in the conference. All right, where to start here? They're fully healthy. They got Tyler Bilodeau back. Eric Daly was absolutely phenomenal. What stood out to you about this UCLA performance?
Well, a lot, but Eric Daly, as you mentioned, first and foremost, Mick Cronin at the beginning of the year called him the Terminator in the podcast because he said this guy just doesn't stop. He keeps going and going. He's a matchup nightmare for pretty much anybody, but especially UCLA. The only person to really match up with him is Brandon Angel. He could take you inside. He could take you outside. He's going to get out in transition. 6'8", big, long frame. And when you have a motor like that to go along with that with those physical attributes and skill set, he's just tough to deal with. And then on top of that, you have guys like Sky Clark, like Dylan Andrews getting going. But it's right there. You see getting in the mid-range for Eric Daly. Put a guy on him his size, put it on the deck. He'll go off the bounce. He'll put you on the block, turn around. He really can do a lot of things that a lot of guys in this conference can't do. And when he's leading the charge, and then you get the guards going, it's tough to guard.
That was my guy, Mara. That outlet pass.
Yeah, you said that, Mara. The Spanish sensation I heard as we came on here.
Oh, my gosh. He threw that. I thought that pass was phenomenal, but he is really good. And you kind of look at, even when Bilodeau was hurt, I actually think that kind of helped them because it allowed Mara to be on the floor more, and we saw what he can do. And now that you got the two of them together, it's really potent. I mean, you look at these last 5 games, they are leading the Big Ten in offensive efficiency. They were 15th in the league before that. Like, it's crazy how much better they have been. And it does beg the question of whether the right strategy is just to call your team soft and delusional.
Yeah, first you got to know how to push the button, right?
I guess, right?
And Mick Cronin, he has a history of knowing how to push the button.
Absolutely. And the man knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing, and he did it. Mara is extremely efficient. He got it going against Wisconsin. For me, though, it's the guards, Dylan Andrews and Sky Clark. I think it was more puzzling at the beginning of the year as to, Sky Clark was a 13 points per game guy last year, averaging 6. Over the last 5 games, in this 5-game win streak, you talked about efficiency. Backcourt is averaging 22 points a game, 12 for Andrews, 10 for Sky Clark. And you know what you're going to get from Daly, the Terminator. You know what you're going to get from Bilodeau. Then you add in Morrow, who seemingly doesn't miss a shot and can make outlet passes from the rafters. So if you get those guards, which we all know, Rayfeld Davis talks about it endlessly, you need those guys to win in March. You get them going, the way this UCLA team guards, they're going to be scary in March.
All right. Sky Clark did a great job on Jackson Shellstad. I thought really took him out of the game. Let's talk about the Ducks here. It does feel like they're struggling a bit here. They've lost 3 of 4. The offense seems a little stuck in the mud here. What do you think's going on with Oregon?
Well, they've had a problem all year long at getting consistency from all 3 guys. We know Jackson Shellstad has to be consistent, which he has been up until last night. Nate Biddle has struggled at times. They found his game a little bit. TJ Bamba and Keyshawn Barthelemy are the guys that really, really have to step up. Keyshawn Barthelemy off the bench has been great. TJ Bamba is the one who's been up and down. Defensively, Oregon's never really going to – they're a good defensive team, right? They're not going to be world beaters on defense, but they're going to be good enough. But to find those guys, which seemingly are perfect fits between Biddle, TJ Bamba, and Jackson Shellstad, how do you get those 3 guys going all at once? And that's going to be the challenge.
They got Nebraska at home on Sunday. Speaking of Nebraska, man, did they need the win that they got. They lost 6 in a row. They never trailed against Illinois, but the Illini still got the game into overtime. And when it got to OT, it kind of felt like, well, maybe Illinois is going to just figure out a way to pull this one out in a game where, frankly, they played really poorly. And we can talk about that in a moment. Yeah. But, man, Nebraska needed it. I thought in the overtime they dug down and got it. They defended really well. What did you take from Nebraska's win?
Well, they got back to the Nebraska ways. They were great in rotation. They stayed out of rotation, actually, which they've been good in all year. But it's tough to rotate for 4 months and scramble and be aggressive, which is really what they hang their hat on. And last night they kept guys in front of them. Juwan Gary, Bryce Williams did a great job with Kasparis Yakachonis, with Kylan Boswell, kept Illinois on the perimeter out of the paint, and then they gang defense. They forced Illinois into 17 turnovers, which was huge. Some of that's on Illinois, self-inflicted.
Yes.
No Ivisic, and Morez Johnson Jr. getting into foul trouble. But either way, you have to give credit to Nebraska. And as Nick Bob mentioned on the broadcast, you even got a Fred Hoiberg fist pump, which is something you don't really see. So good for Nebraska to get on the good foot.
And what I'm about to say, I don't want this in any way to take away from what Nebraska did, because it was a game they needed.
Yeah.
I thought they played well. Williams was great in the overtime. He scored 8 of their 10 points. But, man, Illinois was bad. Yeah. I mean, like we saw them on Sunday without Ivisic, right? So, again, like you can say, well, they don't have their center. And I think that's huge. And I don't want to in any way downplay how important it is to be without him. You know, Brad Underwood told us how important he is for what they do defensively. We know what he can do on the offensive end. So, again, I am fully aware that they did not have their entire team. But, man, they were bad. I mean, they were turning the ball over. They took so many threes. Yeah. And it's a weird team, right? Because they take as many threes as almost anyone in the country. Yeah. They don't shoot them at a great rate. Yeah. And you would say, well, that doesn't make sense. But they make up for it with incredible rebounding. They're a great offensive rebounding team. I just thought they were out of sorts. I couldn't believe it was the same team we saw against Northwestern.
Well, it's not too many times you see a team out-rebound the other side 58-42 and lose the game.
Yeah.
We saw the best version of Illinois. And you talked about that, the threes they shoot when we had the game. The threes they were shooting last night were dribble up, one pass, contested threes. Against Northwestern, they were touch the paint, swing it out, ball movement, extra passes. You saw Ben Hummerkaus get hot. When those are the threes that you're taking, then you can get it going, and then it's even easier to offensive rebound, because we talked about with Nebraska, they're in rotation, the way Illinois crashes the glass. But last night, they just seemed out of sorts. A lot of that has to do with not having a Ivisic. Right. He can step out, and then you get the cuts off of his pass. Morez Johnson Jr. in foul trouble. You don't have the roll man, where Kasparis Yakachonis is so good at seeing the weak side, and Nebraska always has that low man in place, and you just didn't have that. It was very perimeter oriented. They did get it going. Will Riley was great attacking the rim.
Yes.
They got a couple turnovers. Dre Gibbs Longhorn, he got in transition, got a couple buckets, but when they weren't doing that, got to overtime, it got back to the no swings, no extra passes, firing up threes, and you saw the result.
Yeah, it just felt like maybe could have attacked the hoop a little bit more than they 100%. Did there down the stretch. Again, fully cognizant of the fact they're without a really important player. And Brad Underwood told us the other day, hey, when we're whole, I think we can be a Final Four team. I have no reason to doubt that.
Yeah.
But again, it's just the contrast of what we saw over the span of just 5 days was pretty amazing. So they get Ohio State Sunday in Champaign. Ohio State's turning into a good story. Yep. Now 3 straight wins. They beat Penn State at Rec Hall. We saw how tough it was to win there a year ago. Illinois went there and lost. It was a game it felt like Ohio State was completely in control of essentially the whole way. What did you see from the Buckeyes?
I saw one of the best performances I've seen from them all year long, and it started with John Mobley Jr., right? We know about Bruce Thornton. Kez Glover has been up and down, but he's been really important to them. Devin Royal missed a game, and he's been really good. But John Mobley Jr. was a guy, when I watch him, easy with the comparisons, but you do see some Steph Curry in him, right? The way he moves and shoots the ball, quick release. But now he's adding to his game the element of passing, which maybe he already had. He's only a freshman, 8 assists in the last 2 games. That's a career high both nights. So when you have a guy who you have to run off the line, but now you add in him playing in the pick and roll, he's had the lob game and finding guys, he's going to be really tough. And then that opens up Bruce Thornton. That opens up his game, allows him to get off the ball. We saw them have problems with Maryland and teams like that earlier in the year, where they pressured Bruce Thornton, took the ball out of his hands, and John Mobley wasn't the second ball handler that he knows he can be, and he's showing now, and now he's getting to it. Right.
I think we had that pigeonhole of him as kind of he's a shooter, and he's showing that he can be more of a shooter, and they're putting together a nice NCAA tourney resume now. I mean, that's not an easy win to get on the road against Penn State, but they've beaten Kentucky, as we know. They've beaten Purdue as well, so a couple good wins. Rough stretch here for Penn State. They've lost 7 of 8. They get Minnesota at home on Tuesday. It's kind of a must-win, I would say, for the Nittany Lions. Tough to see Ace Baldwin. He's toughing it out, but it's not the player he was before the injury earlier this year. Lots more from Jordan coming up as we continue here on the show. This week is the American Cancer Society Coaches versus Cancer Suits and Sneakers Week, helping promote the American Cancer Society's vision to end cancer as we know it. We're asking fans to help set the screen by making sure they have the most up-to-date information on the recommended cancer screenings. Visit coaches.cancer.org for more information. And our big interview today, we're thrilled to have one of the leaders in the Coaches versus Cancer community, Iowa head basketball coach Fran McCaffery. Coach, really appreciate you joining us. Give people a sense of the scope of Coaches versus Cancer, the backstory as to how it started and where we are and the impact that it has.
Well, first of all, thanks to you and the Big Ten Network for doing this. It started many years ago with Norm Stewart and his battle, which became very public, as you remember, and really galvanized the coaching community to be able to connect with the corporate community in a variety of different ways and challenge each of us in our own communities, but also on a national level to make a difference and use our platforms, which we figured out because of Norm that we could do. And as you know, we've raised well over $100 million. The events that we do, both locally and nationally, whether it be golf tournaments or galas, in every community. And what's also been great, Dave, is how, for example, in our state, all 4 Division I coaches participate together. You know, when I was in Albany, was coach at Siena. The coach at Siena, myself, and Will Brown in Albany, we did it together. And that's a fight, you know, while we compete all season long against one another, this is a fight that we're in together. And the more we can do in terms of education and encouragement to get colonoscopies, mammograms, blood work, to be able to get early detection of any possible cancer showing up later on. Obviously, it was a personal battle for myself and my wife, Margaret, with our family, with Patrick having been diagnosed with cancer at age 14. So living through that and whether it be the Coaches versus Cancer program or helping Dick Vitale with the V Foundation, all in the same fight against cancer.
You mentioned Patrick, and it was amazing, Fran. You know, I had a Butler game earlier this year, had him against Wisconsin, and he's such a great kid, as you know, and it's just awesome to see him. It's awesome to see him out there, and I think a lot. I mean, every time I watch him play, whether it was the time he spent with you or the time watching him play in that game, of everything that your family's been through in this battle. So give people a sense of kind of how that changed your family. And you were really involved, as you said, Coaches versus Cancer long before Patrick's diagnosis. But how did that change the way that you look at this disease?
Well, it changed it dramatically. You know, I lost both my parents to cancer, so I got involved with this program many years ago through Jimmy Saddlein, who asked me to participate when I was coaching at UNC Greensboro, never dreaming that my child at age 14, we'd have to wake him up the day after his 14th birthday and tell him he has cancer. And knowing his reaction was like, you know, I think I'm going to die. And then subsequent to that, you know, his best friend got cancer and he passed away at age 15. And how hard that was on Patrick and how hard that was on our family and our friends. But what it has done, it's empowered us to make a difference. We have been very active, in particular at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics, with an AYA program. It's Adolescent Young Adult Cancer Program. We were the second hospital in the state to have a program like that studies why cancer patients from the ages of 13 to 31 are having worse outcomes than pediatric cancer and adult cancer. So we have raised a lot of money with our own personal gala for that cause in particular, and we're very proud of that. And Margaret was on the National Council for American Cancer Society, board, and now she's on the board for ACS CAN, which is a lobbying arm of the American Cancer Society, which goes to Washington and lobbies Congress and Senate for major funds for cancer research. And again, I do what I can on the National Council for Coaches versus Cancer. We meet periodically, of course, at the Final Four, but other times throughout the year. And then I work with Lon Kruger with his incredible event in Las Vegas, with Natalie Morrison, with our National Coaches versus Cancer golf tournament. And it's something that, really I've enjoyed, but, just watching, people like Roy Williams, who's retired now, but so active in this fight with us. And then, so it's a lot of coaches, it's a lot of retired coaches, but there's also a lot of younger guys getting involved. And that's what we need.
Hey, you mentioned Roy and Lon. They had a big event in Chicago last year. Natalie helped oversee that. And again, there are just so many different things that are going on really every month throughout the year, raising funds for cancer research. And I think it just the idea of kind of doing the suits and sneakers and doing this week really publicly to show how galvanized college basketball coaches are has been such a great idea. You did mention Patrick's best friend passing away from cancer, Austin Flash. I know they called him. I saw that there was a baseball tournament in his memory in this last year. Just give us a sense for what a special young man he was and how that friendship impacted Patrick.
Watching those two battle this disease together is not something that we ever thought we'd be watching. He was so brave, and it was so upsetting, so dramatic for all of us, for our entire community, because of his family's involvement. He had younger siblings. His parents are awesome, and what they have done is an amazing job. They have their own foundation, they have their own events, and they raise a lot of money. And what's really important is that we do that, but also that we remember Flash, that we remember Austin Schrader. And they have been invited by Dick Vitale to his event every year, the Beat Foundation event. There's a clinical trial named after Austin. Austin's father, Craig, spoke at that particular event. Last year, we raised $25 million in one night. Wow. Very few people can do that. Dick Vitale can. I've spoken at that event myself. But just to go there and see all the different coaches, I see Tom Crean there every year. A dear friend, as you recall, when Patrick was diagnosed, Tom called me on the phone, and we prayed over the phone. That's the kind of person Tom is. So it galvanizes, as you pointed out, the coaching community in a lot of different ways. And I think it allows people to see us differently than what you might perceive on the sideline.
Coach, I want to ask you about your team, but before we leave this topic and all of the impact that the coaches across the country have made, is there a final message you'd want people to kind of glean or take from this?
I just want as many people to get involved as possible. Help us in any way that you can. But more importantly, go to the doctor. Have blood work done. Your blood work tells you a lot. Make sure you get your annual checkups. Make sure you get colonoscopies. Start younger. It was 50, now it's 45, 40, whatever. If there's family history, that's not something you should die from unless it goes undetected. And we all know people who have passed because they didn't know they had cancer. And sometimes you don't. But the way that you do is you go to your doctor and you have tests done and you're diligent so that if we get it early, we'll have a lot more birthdays.
Well said. And again, a really important message. And once again, the theme this year, as it was last year, is to set the screen to get screened. So again, we encourage people, coaches.cancer.org. Fran, I do want to ask you about your team. You had this week off. You've got a really big week coming up. You have Purdue and Wisconsin back to back. I mean, those are games, you win those games and you are right back in the thick of things. What have you worked on with your team here during this downtime to get ready for those big games?
What we've done is worked on our stuff, what we're doing, whether it be offensively or defensively, rather than jump to the next opponent and prepare for what they do or what they might do. We have some things to get corrected, whether it be ball screen defense, rebounding, motion offense, transition game. We are a little banged up, Dave. I guess who isn't at this point in the season? Everybody seems to be, but we are. So we're dealing with that, and we're trying to figure some things out personnel-wise. So the important thing is to just stay positive and keep grinding.
All right, an important message for sure on a lot of different levels in life. Coach, really appreciated all the work that you do. You've been a tireless advocate for this cause. As you said, Margaret as well has just been amazing. Thank you very much for your time and for all you do in the fight against cancer. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Dave.